The roast was overcooked. That's the first thing I noticed. Not the stiffness in my father's posture or the forced laughter from Indira, just the way the meat crumbled when I tried to cut it. Funny how something so minor can anchor a moment you'll never forget. I'd been back home in Flagstaff for 8 months, left my teaching job, my small rented apartment, and the quiet life I'd built, all to take care of Mom after her surgery. I told myself it was temporary, a few months maybe, but like most temporary things in families, it stretched, and like most sacrifices, it went unnoticed. Dinner was set like a Norman Rockwell painting. Mom had her best table runner out, Arthur at the head like always, Indira on his right. I took the seat at the far end, where guests usually sat. It wasn't assigned, it just made sense. No one said anything about the arrangement. They didn't need to. Arthur started in halfway through the meal. "Electric bills through the roof again," he said, not looking at me. "I swear this house breathes like a dragon." "Maybe someone's leaving lights on all night," Indira added, pouring herself more wine. She didn't look at me either, just smirked. I kept chewing. I'd already learned that any defense would only stretch the conversation longer. Then came the real blow. Arthur set his fork down, leaned back in his chair, and looked me square in the eye. "Let's just be honest here. It's not your house. You're here because we pity you." No one gasped. No one coughed. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. I placed my fork down carefully. My palms were damp under the table, pressed against my jeans. I didn't say anything, not because I agreed, but because the room didn't feel safe enough for the truth. The rest of the dinner passed in stiff silence, broken only by the occasional scrape of cutlery or Indira's humming. When Mom asked if anyone wanted pie, no one responded. Later, I walked past Arthur's office on the way to the laundry room. The door was half open, the desk lamp still on. A stack of papers caught my eye. Neat, orderly, he was always meticulous. On top, bolded letters, transfer of ownership. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The address listed was this house. The signatures dated back 2 years. The grantee? Indira, not the children, just her. It was like stepping on a stair you thought was there and falling through air. I stood in the hallway longer than I should have, piecing it together. The timing, the push to come home, the sudden coldness, none of it was coincidence. It was orchestration. I wasn't their daughter. I was their placeholder. When I returned to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, keys still in hand. My mind replayed that moment in Arthur's office, his eyes steady, voice steady. "We pity you." Pity, not love, not concern. Just that cold, clinical word. I had left everything to be here, left a steady job, left stability, because I thought I mattered. From the kitchen, I heard low voices. Mom and Indira, just murmurs, but clear enough when you're trained to listen. "She still thinks we're going to split it," Mom said. Indira chuckled. "Let her believe that for now." I didn't go back downstairs. I didn't need pie. I woke up before the sun, the room still wrapped in shadows, and for a brief second, I forgot where I was. But the stale silence of that house reminded me I wasn't home. I was merely occupying space in someone else's narrative. The coffee machine sputtered as I stood barefoot in the kitchen, deliberately avoiding eye contact with Indira, who scrolled on her phone like I didn't exist, and Seraphine, who rearranged sugar packets that didn't need rearranging. Not a single word between us, just the low hum of contempt hanging over the tiled floor. I waited until Arthur had finished reading the sports section before I spoke. My voice was measured, too calm to be confrontational, but firm enough to be noticed. Why was the house transferred to Indira without telling me? He didn't look up from the paper. Seraphine folded her arms and tilted her head like I'd asked something absurd. "You don't contribute financially, Celine," she said, like that settled it. We had to make decisions for the good of the family. "Is that what you call it?" I asked. Arthur finally chimed in. "You should be grateful we let you stay here as long as we did. You walked in here with nothing. We gave you food, a roof, and this is how you repay us?" "You gave me food?" I laughed, but it sounded broken. "I left my job, my life." Arthur stood. "You want to sue us? Please. You can't even pay for your own groceries." Then he handed me a piece of paper. Outstanding household contributions, it read, with a neat list of debts I'd apparently racked up since moving in. Water, gas, Wi-Fi. Everything down to the bottle of Advil in the medicine cabinet. A grand total of $3,048.72. Rounded up, of course. That's what you owe us for living here, he said, lips curling into a smirk. Unless you'd prefer eviction. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to my room and called my bank. I needed answers. Last year, I transferred over $6,000 from my savings to help fix the roof. A month later, Indira showed up with a brand new car. The voice on the other end confirmed my suspicion. The payment wasn't marked for a contractor. It was routed directly to a dealership. I walked back out to the living room. You used my money to buy her a car, I said. Indira looked up lazily from the couch. It was for the house, she said. Transportation counts. I use it to run errands for Mom. Arthur didn't even blink. Seraphine stayed quiet. The three of them sat there like a tribunal who'd already written my verdict. That night, I told them I wanted the financial records, proof of everything they claimed I owed. Arthur's reply? You're escalating. We don't feel safe. 30 minutes later, 2 officers stood at the door. One of them asked politely if I'd be willing to resolve the matter peacefully by finding alternative accommodations. The other had his hand near his belt, just in case. I didn't argue. I went to my room, packed a single duffel bag, no photos, no goodbye, just the essentials. I passed Seraphine on the way out. She didn't move, just stared at the floor. Near the front door, I paused. There was a photo on the table, one from a Christmas years ago, all of us in matching sweaters. My face was gone, literally cut out with scissors. I didn't ask why. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been for Arizona. I didn't cry, not because I was brave, but because I'd run out of the energy it takes to fall apart. The motel smelled like old carpet and cheaper soap. I didn't even take off my shoes when I got in last night. Just dropped the duffel on the floor and collapsed on top of the covers. I must have laid there for hours, eyes wide, staring at a ceiling stained by years of stories like mine. There's a saying that came back to me while watching dust float through the morning light. People think betrayal feels like a stab, but it doesn't. It feels like paperwork. Dry, silent, final. 2 years ago, after Mom slipped on the back porch and twisted her ankle, she'd insisted I sign something, just in case something worse ever happened. She said it was a healthcare form, something that would let me speak on her behalf if she ended up in the hospital. There was no lawyer, no explanation, just Seraphine in the kitchen handing me a pen while Indira poured lemonade like we were celebrating something. Now I know better. That piece of paper wasn't about health. It was about erasure. It was a waiver, and in one signature, mine, I'd signed away any claim to the house I'd grown up in, not because I was foolish, but because I trusted the wrong people. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, phone in one hand, memory in the other. The last year came into focus like a jigsaw puzzle snapping into place. Indira's sudden return, the roof repairs that never happened, the way conversations shifted when I walked into the room. None of it was spontaneous. They'd been planning this, step by methodical step. That night they called the cops. That was the end game. Everything before that was rehearsal. It wasn't just about kicking me out. It was about making sure I never came back. I opened the drawer of the nightstand and pulled out the yellowed envelope I'd tucked away years ago. Not because I thought I'd need it, but because my gut told me to. Inside, folded between receipts and a faded Christmas card, was a photocopy of the very form I'd signed. I'd kept it without even realizing why. My name was there, my signature, neat and centered. But something else caught my eye this time. A small footnote, printed in finer text. In the event of mental incapacitation, all property shall be transferred solely to Indira Vale. A deep cold settled in my spine. Not fear, not sadness, just something bone deep. Like standing in a room where everyone's been speaking a different language and you've just now become fluent. I needed answers. I needed the rest of the picture. The next morning, I walked into the public records office. The fluorescent lighting buzzed. The clerk didn't even blink when I requested all property transfers, power of attorney filings, and deed amendments under the names Arthur and Seraphine Moorhead. I sat in a plastic chair and waited. She brought me a stack. I sifted through it carefully, methodically, looking for any sliver of logic in a pile of lies. That's when I found it. An addendum, handwritten, attached to the waiver. It was dated 8 months before I came back home, before the fall, before the invitation to return. In the event of mental incapacitation, the property shall transfer solely to Indira Vale. Seraphine had signed it, but the witness line? Blank. No lawyer, no notary, just the ghost of a pen stroke and a plan stitched with carelessness. I sat there, document in hand, pulse steady. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have cash. But what I had now was motive, and more importantly, a start. 2 days after I walked out of the records office with a folder full of betrayal, my phone rang. I almost didn't pick up. The number wasn't saved, but something in me knew who it was before I answered. "Hey!" Astria's voice came through soft and unusually pleasant. Too polished, too careful. "Do you have time for brunch tomorrow? Just to talk?" I didn't answer right away. The last time we'd talked was months ago, and even then, it was more like obligatory holiday politeness. Now she wanted brunch. Not coffee, brunch. The safe meal. The meal people choose when they're hoping to keep things civil. We met at a place in downtown Flagstaff where the menus looked like they hadn't been updated since 2002. She wore pearls, which told me she was playing nice. I wore what I had, jeans and the same sweater I'd folded into my motel bag. The small talk didn't last long. Astria got straight to it. "Look, I had no idea about the house transfer," she said, setting down her water with a rehearsed grace. "I just found out recently myself." I stared at her. "Do you have a copy of the deed?" She blinked. Once. Twice. "Yes," she said eventually. "They gave it to me. A while back. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to get involved." My stomach clenched. So she knew. She knew before the insults, before the fake debts, before the cops. And she said nothing. "Not getting involved," I repeated. "Your family, Astria, not the mailman." She sighed and leaned in. "You know how they are, Celine. It's easier to go along than to push back. You're the one who always wants to fix things. I don't have the energy for that." I stirred my lukewarm coffee, watching the cream swirl, then settle. "And you know who I am," I said quietly. "But you still chose what was convenient instead of what was right." We didn't finish our food. She asked if I needed anything. I told her I was fine, which was a lie, but one I'd earned the right to say. That afternoon, I sat on a park bench near the courthouse and scrolled through my messages. One stood out, from Zinnia, my niece. "Grandma and Grandpa are selling the house next month," it read. "They're taking Aunt Indira to Sydney. She got into some program thing." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Everything was suddenly, painfully clear. They weren't just removing me. They were accelerating the erasure. Shipping Indira off, selling the house, cutting the cord before I could tie anything back together. That night in my motel, I let the silence breathe before I did. I thought about how much time I'd wasted trying to make a seat at a table that was always one chair short. Sometimes your real family aren't the people who raised you. Sometimes they're the ones who stay when there's nothing left to gain. And mine wasn't in that bloodline anymore. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Astria's name, and typed a single message. "I don't need you to take sides anymore. I just need you out of the way." Then I blocked her. The library was quiet in the way only old buildings are. Every page turn echoed. I sat tucked into the farthest corner, notes spread out across the table like a post-mortem of my family's love. The stack of printouts from the records office stared back at me, each line another stitch in the tapestry of betrayal. I was flipping through one of the deeds when I heard it, soft, hesitant. "Ms. Marlowe?" I looked up, unsure whether to brace or smile. "You probably don't remember me. Vera Aldridge. Lincoln High, class of 2004. And then it clicked. She was taller now, confident, well-dressed in a tailored navy blazer, but her eyes were still the same. Back then, she barely spoke in class, Always in the back row, notebook filled with tiny drawings in the margins. I nodded, surprised. Of course I remember. She gave me a look, grateful, waited. You were the first teacher who didn't make me feel like I was a problem to solve. We talked, briefly. Then I told her the story, raw and honest, the house, the transfer, the lies wrapped in good intentions. I didn't soften it, and she didn't blink. When I finished, she leaned forward. I don't charge for justice, she said. I charge for excuses, and you haven't given me any. I didn't answer right away, not because I doubted her, but because for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone saw me as more than collateral damage. She pulled out a legal pad. We'll need receipts, messages, any record of what you've contributed. That night, back in my room at the motel, I opened an old email account I hadn't touched in years. I found dozens of messages from Mom, asking me to cover utilities, order supplies, coordinate appointments. I printed them all. I dug out check stubs from the box I kept under the bed. I listed every repair I'd arranged, every grocery run I paid for. And then, while clearing my voicemail inbox to make room, I found it. A message from Seraphine, dated nearly 3 years ago. Celine, I know we don't say this enough. Her voice crackled through the speaker. But this house is yours. It always will be. You're the one who stayed. You're the one who made it a home. I hit play again, then handed the phone to Vera. She nodded once. People underestimate voicemail. I don't. 2 days later, we filed our first official challenge at the county courthouse. Vera walked into the clerk's office with a confidence that seemed carved from steel. I followed, heart thudding, not from fear, but from clarity. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was moving forward. That evening, I sat outside the motel with a cup of bad coffee and watched the sun dip below the horizon. My phone buzzed. A message from Indira. So you're going to make this ugly, huh? I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back. Ugly already happened. I'm just turning on the light. It started with a text from an old neighbor, just 5 words. Your mom's on Channel 7. I was sitting in the corner booth of a diner off Route 66, waiting for my order when I clicked the link. The screen filled with the local news logo and a familiar face in a shade of gray I didn't expect. Seraphine, in pearls and a navy blouse, blinked delicately through rehearsed tears. The headline rolled beneath her like a punch to the chest. Daughter sues elderly parents over home dispute. I set my coffee down, hard. The anchor's voice softened. Tonight, a family torn apart. Seraphine Moorhead speaks out about the daughter who's taken legal action to seize the very home she once called her own. Then Seraphine appeared in full frame, hands clasped in her lap, chin tilted just enough to look both dignified and wounded. We took her in, she said, voice cracking, when she had nowhere else to go, and now she's trying to take our home. The place where we raised her. Cut to Arthur, sitting straight-backed beside her. It's heartbreaking, he added, when your own child turns on you like a stranger. Behind them, the house loomed, carefully framed, lighting perfect, like some Norman Rockwell painting frozen in betrayal. My name was mentioned twice, not as a person but as a problem. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. Vera didn't flinch when I called her. We've got more than sound bites, she said. Let's show them what memory really sounds like. By that evening, Channel 7 aired a follow-up segment, no commentary, just a simple clip from a family video dated 3 years prior. Seraphine, sitting at the kitchen table, wine glass in hand, laughing. Celine's done more for this house than anyone, she said. She deserves it more than all of us. This place would have fallen apart without her. No tears, no dramatics, just truth they'd forgotten we'd kept. But that wasn't the nail in the coffin. The next morning, Vera opened her inbox. A message from Leora, our next-door neighbor, now nearly 80, and mostly invisible to the family who ignored her unless they needed sugar. I didn't want to get involved, she wrote, but what they did wasn't right. Attached was a video file, grainy, time-stamped, and brutal in its honesty. It showed the night I was removed. Me, standing on the porch, one duffel bag in hand. Arthur on the steps behind me, arms crossed, mouth unmoving. Seraphine off to the side, arms folded, watching. Two officers between us, their posture saying more than their words ever did. The clip was picked up by a regional news page, then it went further. Comments poured in. Support, outrage, recognition. And then, the quiet shift happened. In line at the grocery store, people nodded. A woman with silver hair put a hand on my arm and whispered, "You did the right thing." Later that day, another message from Indira. "You're humiliating them," she typed. I didn't hesitate before replying. "I'm not doing anything that wasn't already done. I'm just holding up the mirror." That night, as Vera locked her office for the evening, the receptionist handed her a manila envelope someone had dropped off anonymously. No return address, no message, just a sticky note inside. She wasn't always a mother. Ask about 1984. Underneath it, a photocopy of what looked like sealed court documents. And just like that, I realized the fight wasn't just about me. They'd buried more than just a deed. Vera laid the envelope on her desk like it was made of glass. I sat across from her, still damp from the morning rain, unsure if I wanted what was inside, or if I already knew. She peeled it open slowly. Inside were court documents from 1984, faded but intact. The name wasn't Seraphine Moorhead. It was her maiden name, Seraphine Dalton. Vera scanned them, her brow tightening. Then she looked up. "She lost custody of a daughter," she said. Neglect, emotional manipulation, and something vague but persistent about psychological abuse. I blinked. She had another child? Apparently, yes. A little girl from her first marriage, gone before I was ever born, erased from every photo, every family story. Not once had that name, or any mention of a sibling, ever crossed her lips. She built her image from scratch, Vera added. And it worked, but this changes things. I nodded, trying to stay still while the ground shifted under me. My whole life, Mom clung to morality like a medal, lectured strangers on manners, corrected people in line at the post office. She kept a prayer book in the car. Now I understood why. It was camouflage. After lunch, I walked over to Leora's house. Her porch creaked beneath me, and when she opened the door, her eyes already held the answer. "I always wondered when you'd find out," she said before I could even ask. "Your mom came here in '89, started fresh, told everyone she was a widow raising 2 girls. She never mentioned the one before you. She reinvented herself," I said. Leora nodded. "And she buried every piece that didn't fit." The words rattled inside me. They hadn't just tried to erase me. They'd done it before, to someone who never got the chance to fight back. And now I understood why Seraphine hated being questioned, why Arthur snapped when I asked about paperwork, why Indira always got protected like a precious heirloom. They were guarding a legacy built on lies. That night, I sat on my motel bed and reread the documents. Each line a wound I hadn't known existed. But I wasn't shattered. I was steadied. This wasn't just my fight anymore. I pulled out my testimony draft and started rewriting. No longer pleading, no longer emotional. Now it was surgical, clean, unshakable. I wasn't reclaiming property, I whispered to myself. I was reclaiming truth. It didn't take long for the ripple to reach them. Arthur sent a message through an old family friend. "She's dragging up ghosts to get attention." Indira went full tilt, texted me 3 times in 1 hour. "You're sick. You've always been vindictive. Mom and Dad don't deserve this." I didn't respond, not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. Silence was louder now. 3 days later, Vera called me from her office. She sounded calm, but there was something charged beneath her tone. "Celine, we just got a call." From someone listed in the original 1984 case, a woman named Brenda. She testified against Seraphine. She wants to talk. I waited. She said, "I never thought I'd see the day someone had the courage to fight her. I'll help." I closed my eyes, took one long, measured breath. I wasn't walking into court alone anymore. I was walking in with the truth, and witnesses she thought were long buried. The courthouse was already buzzing when Vera and I arrived. Local reporters stood along the sidewalk, murmuring into handheld recorders. I ignored them. I wasn't there for spectacle. I was there for closure. We stepped into the courtroom just before 9:15. Vera, calm and composed, adjusted her blazer like she was about to perform surgery. I sat next to her in silence. No nerves, just breath and purpose. Across the aisle, Arthur and Seraphine entered with their attorney. Neither looked my way. Of course they didn't. When the judge called our case, Vera rose first. Her voice didn't rise, didn't waver. She introduced our exhibits without flourish, just facts. Then came the voicemail. The courtroom speakers crackled for a second, and then Seraphine's voice filled the space, clear and undeniable. "This house is yours, Celine. You're the one who stayed." Not a plea, not a slip, just truth she never expected to hear again. Vera let the silence sit, then introduced the next item, the 1984 custody documents. The room shifted, uncomfortable. Even the clerk paused in her typing. And finally, Leora's video. The footage of me being forced out of my home like a trespasser while my parents stood watching. By the time Vera finished, the judge no longer looked neutral. She looked furious. "Ms. Marlowe," the judge said, turning to me, "thank you for your patience." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without unraveling. She turned back to Arthur and Seraphine. "In light of the evidence presented, it is the court's decision to void the prior deed transfer. The property shall be returned to Ms. Celine Marlowe." Arthur inhaled sharply. Seraphine didn't blink. "You have 14 days to vacate," the judge continued. "Legal fees will be your responsibility. Emotional damages are denied. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell, and with it, everything. Vera leaned in, her voice low. They underestimated the quiet one. Outside, reporters surged forward, microphones, flashbulbs, questions I had no interest in answering. But I said one thing, because it needed to be said. No home should ever be weaponized against the person who held it together. That night, Indira's Instagram was wiped clean. Astria didn't call, didn't text. I didn't expect her to. The house looked smaller when I returned to it. Not physically, but in spirit. It felt like a space emptied of lies, waiting to breathe again. I didn't unpack immediately. I walked each room, listened to the quiet. I kept the bones, the floors, the walls, but not much else. I donated half the furniture, painted the front door, removed every old photo from the walls. The ones where I wasn't smiling, the ones where I'd been cut out. Then I changed the locks. A new set of keys. Just one copy. No spare. 2 weeks later, I started something I'd thought about for a long time. A scholarship fund in Seraphine's maiden name, Dalton. Not as a tribute, as a reclamation. It was for women who'd been erased inside their own families, for the daughters written out of stories because they didn't fit the picture. I didn't send out a press release. I didn't write a speech. I just wrote a line on the website. This fund is for those who were told they were guests in the home they built. I didn't win a war. I ended one no one else had dared to name. I lost a family, but I found a name they couldn't take back. Mine.